Hey guys, welcome back to The Crime Sheet. I'm Andrea Cipriano, and in today's video, I want to talk about the 2001 disappearance of Alyssa Turney. I feel that the true crime community is becoming more and more popular these days, which is great, but sometimes it lacks a certain perspective, and in this case, it's the family perspective. So for that reason, I brought on Sarah Turney to help me tell the story of Alyssa Turney, Sarah's sister. Sarah has been an advocate in Alyssa's case for a long time now, and she's been doing everything that she can to help get her sister's story out there. A lot of that includes going on other people's podcasts and YouTube channels, and Sarah now has her own podcast called Voices for Justice, which she talks about Alyssa's case on. Before we start getting into the video, I want to give you just a little bit of background on Alyssa's case. Alyssa Turney has been missing since May 17th of 2001. It was the last day of Alyssa's junior year in high school, and her stepdad, Michael Turney, picked her up early from school that day. Michael alleges that he went out to lunch with Alyssa, and then they got into an argument. They went home, and a few hours later, Alyssa ran away, leaving a note, and she was never seen again. As we start to go through this video, you'll see that a lot of what Michael alleges doesn't seem to add up, and this is where Sarah's advocacy comes in. So before we get into more of the details, I want Sarah to tell you guys a little bit more about who Alyssa was.
She had this spark in her that was so cool. It was very protective and really outgoing and just fun-loving. Like I said, we fought a lot. She teased me a lot and I teased her back, but she always protected me every step of the way. As she got older, she became really alternative. She wore these big Janko jean raver pants with all the bracelets and then a Care Bears shirt. She always had some type of handmade piece of jewelry from her friends on. So it was yeah, she was that girl you don't want to mess with, but that she was also really, really sweet. She would listen to Marilyn Manson and Deftones and Eminem, but then on her bed was a Blues Clues blanket. So she was just this really cool mixture of someone who really didn't take any crap, but someone who was also really compassionate.
In the same way that many people remember Alyssa as the compassionate friend, she also had a rebellious side that was undeniable, just as many teenagers do.
When I was growing up, I really thought that she was crazy. I thought that she was absolutely wild. Alyssa really only drank a few times and smoked pot, when she could as a teen. But it wasn't anything that I think she was doing on an everyday basis. So it really evolved. I thought that she was crazy bad. There was this experience where she came home drunk one time and she goes, "Sarah, come here." And I'm like, "Oh no, it's really scary for me. I'm 8 or whatever." And she's like, "Don't ever drink. Don't be like me. Don't do this." So yeah, when I was young, I thought that was really bad. But now growing up, I realize, most teens experiment with drinking and especially pot. She wasn't bad. But what ended up happening is that my father really, Michael Turney, depicted it in such a way that she was wild. Even when he reported her missing, he said she's a known drug user. It's just, he really uses it to demonize her in a way that he didn't do to me when I did the same thing. In 2009, when we go on ABC 2020, they have this part where they're like, she maybe wasn't the best teen. And they talk about, her drinking and smoking pot. And I think at first it absolutely did. I think the police said, okay, this is a teenager who does drugs, who is rebelling against her parent. It makes sense that she's running away.
After talking to Sarah about Alyssa, I wanted to know more about the family dynamic in the household. Here's what Sarah shared with me.
So I was 4, when my mother passed away, so I don't remember a lot. But the story goes, my dad met my mom. My father had 3 boys, 3 children with another woman. And my mom had 2 kids, both from different dads. And so they met, they got married, and then they had me. But both of them had full custody of their kids. So it wasn't as if I saw my brothers going to another house or saw Alyssa going to another house at any time. It was just family. We didn't call each other step. We didn't call each other half. And it didn't feel that way, even, after my mom and everything. And, a lot of my 2 closest brothers are the ones that aren't related by blood. It's just the ones, it's just the way we grew up. It was never a separation. To me, it just felt like family and brothers and sisters. My brothers are a lot older than we are. So eventually it just became me, Alyssa, and my dad. I'd say by 1996 or 7, So for those last 5 years or so with her, it was really just us. And that's really where most of my memories come from, is just the three of us.
Since Barbara unfortunately passed away when the girls were really young, a lot of Sarah's memories have to do with Michael Turney being the main parent at home. Michael always had a bit of a paranoid personality about him, and it started to manifest into home surveillance.
My father recorded every phone call coming in and going out of the house since before I was born, like since the 1970s. So I was born into this. So it didn't make me feel any type of way, to be honest. Like, you just knew to turn it off if you were going to talk about something you didn't want dad to hear about. And it wasn't as if he would come to you and say, don't turn it off, or anything crazy like that. It was just always something we thought was a failsafe for the numerous amount of lawsuits that he filed, because he filed a ton growing up. He was always talking about, suing the union for this and suing the labor department for this, and we're going to get our big settlement here. And granted, one time we did get a very large settlement, so it felt very real to us. So yeah, the monitoring was really nothing when it came to the phone. And then we got cameras outside, facing the front door and stuff like that. And that just seemed cool, right? Because this is like 1999, and now I have a camera at my front door, and I just feel really high tech. But then, yeah, one day he, said, "Come here, look at this," and showed me a video. And it was of Alyssa making out with a boy on the couch, and it was through the point of view of our vent. We had a vent facing the living room couch. It was up in the ceiling, and he had a camera in there, so you could see like the grates and everything. And at that time, I didn't think a ton of it either, to be totally honest.
So now we know that there was a lot of home surveillance inside of the house, and here's what Michael Turney had to say in an interview about his own behavior. The story continues to take a sinister turn as we learn that Alyssa says that she was sexually abused by Michael multiple times.
So there's quite a few, right? It started when she was 9. She went to my father's girlfriend, who was also Alyssa's teacher, and said, "I'm having sex with my dad." And it's my understanding that she kind of blew it off. She just thought Alyssa was telling stories, and nothing ever came of it. She didn't report it. It wasn't looked into. And it's something that my dad, like when he went on ABC 2020 in 2009, they asked him, "What's your favorite memory of Alyssa?" And that's what he says, is that Alyssa was going around telling the neighbors that she was having sex. So, I just like to point that out right then and there, because it's very strange. And then as we get older, more of these allegations come out. She starts telling her friends that she was tied up to a chair, that she was tied to her bed. And then there's 2 instances that we know of that she was driven out into the middle of the desert and either sexually assaulted or he attempted to sexually assault her. So one happened where I guess he was assaulting her or trying to assault her, and she acts cool about it, gets back in the truck with him. They drive home. Once they get home, she runs from the truck and runs to a neighbor's house and tells him what happened. My dad goes over there and, according to the reports, intimidates this neighbor and tells him that she's like on LSD or some type of psychedelic drug. And in another instance, he takes her back out into the middle of the desert, either, again, assaults her or attempts to assault her, and leaves her to walk home. And we know this because this is what she tells her friends. So, yeah, there were quite a few instances starting at the age of 9 all the way up till at least, a year before she was gone.
So this next clip was taken after Alyssa went missing. It's a clip of Alyssa's boyfriend at the time talking with police about one of the times that Alyssa says that she was sexually abused by Michael. And the details here are really important. Take a look. So a lot of the details that we heard from some of the stories just now echo a lot of what we know to be verifiable details about the day that Alyssa went missing. And again, these are details that I want you to keep in mind as we go throughout the rest of the video. When the sexual abuse starts, Alyssa becomes really vocal about it, and Michael Turney becomes calculated in ways to try to cover up what Alyssa's been saying. Michael Turney even makes Alyssa sign a contract saying that she was never sexually abused by him, and he then gets the document notarized. This document is later recovered by police.
When that incident happened, where Alyssa ran to the neighbor, my dad flipped out and started calling everybody. He called Child Protective Services and says that Alyssa was going to call and say that she was being sexually abused, but she was lying because she wanted a truck. And he starts calling my Aunt Lynette and saying that she's out of control. Will you take her? And she says yes. And he goes, oh, never mind. She changed her mind. And then I believe it was about a week before Alyssa was gone that he made another call to Lynette and said that she was out of control. Will you take her? And again, she said yes.
So it's at this point in our conversation that Sarah and I start to talk about the day that Alyssa went missing. Like I said in the beginning of the video, Michael Turney went to pick her up early at the last day of her junior year in high school, even though the day was actually an early dismissal. The story of what Michael alleges happened after he picked up Alyssa changes every time he talks to the police, to the reporters, and even to 2020. So I wanted to clarify some of those details with Sarah.
So why he picked her up out of school, I don't know. And those school records are gone now. But yeah, now he says it was to avoid her boyfriend, which I don't believe to be true. I don't think the boyfriend had anything to do with it. I think he loved her very much. I've read through their phone transcripts, and they're very sappy and mushy and teenage, everything you would expect from teenagers that age who love each other. And another factor with that is that she had plans with him for that night. They were going to go to graduation and a party. So this pick me up early to avoid my boyfriend who I'm going to see in a few hours doesn't make sense to me. We do know that he called her cell phone twice while she was at school. And the calls last for less than 1 minute, which means either they really did last for 1 minute and it was a quick, hey, this is going to happen. Okay, great, bye. Or she didn't pick up. We don't know. Well, and the thing is, I believe that these days you can get more detailed phone logs from the phone company. But at this point in the investigation, the police hadn't looked into it for many years. So all they have is a phone bill, which would give you less detailed information.
Michael alleges that he went out to lunch with Alyssa and then they got into an argument. They went home, and a few hours later, Alyssa ran away.
He can't remember which restaurant they went to. He can't remember if they ate there or took it home. There's no receipt. There's no footage. No. And he was notorious for using cash. And even further, like, you know, like a grocery rewards card you would use, you know, like give your phone number or whatever. He would register for those with no phone number under the name Tom Jones because he was convinced that people were tracking him, which, to be granted, for like marketing and consumer purposes, absolutely, like he's not wrong. But yeah, so it made it very hard to track because everything was cash and nothing was under his name, and yeah.
So after hearing all of this, my mind immediately went to the home recording surveillance devices that are in the house. And so I asked Sarah, there has to be some evidence of Alyssa being there that day, right?
No, none of it. There's no video footage, there's no audio, anything, there's nothing. And, you know, we had that camera in the vent. And it was a small home, you know, so even if they were fighting in her bedroom or my bed, if they were fighting anywhere in the house, I would imagine that camera in the vent would at least pick up the audio of that. And we don't have any of that. So no, there's absolutely nothing to confirm that she was taken to lunch or even taken back home that day. So he tells all sorts of different stories. He said yes, that there was footage, and he tried to give it to the police and he reviewed it and there was absolutely nothing on it. And then he says there was no footage from that day and it didn't record anything.
If he was recording and saving a lot of the data, it would be really odd if only one part of the data is missing, especially on a day that Alyssa goes missing.
So it was always on. It was attached to like a VCR. So it was basically a small screen. It was black and white on top of a VCR, and then there's like a stack of tapes. And there was no rhyme or reason. It wasn't like after 8 hours I'm going to switch the tape. So they would have to be manually switched. But yeah, I mean, they were on all the time, as far as I know. We have videotapes from the 70s. We have audio tapes from the 70s. We have audio tapes of me calling Blockbuster and Pizza Hut to order a pizza. We have, you know, hours and hours and hours of security footage of just random stuff. He retained the videos of her making out with boys on the couch. He retained the videos of her fighting with her boyfriend on camera. But yeah, all of a sudden this video it doesn't exist.
So at this point in Michael's story, he says that the two get into an argument and he's not sure if it happens at a restaurant or if it happens at home. But he says that the two get home and she storms off into her room and slams the door, and that's the last time that he sees her. After that, he leaves the house and is apparently driving around for a few hours. At this point in his story, we're not exactly sure where he goes, but at some point he has to go pick up Sarah after she comes back from a school field trip. I'll let Sarah tell you about her experience that day.
So we got back from the field trip and I walked to my friend's house, which I did all the time. So I can't remember if I called him and told him or if I just did it. Like, I'm sure I just went. Because again, like, it was something I did almost every day. They lived right down the street from the school. And their dad worked nights. So their house was the place to be after school because there was no parental supervision. So yeah, that day we walked to their house and we were smoking cigarettes, which was like one of my only rules. Like, I was able to do a lot as a kid, but smoke cigarettes, which I mean, yeah, like a 12-year-old shouldn't smoke cigarettes, right? Like, it seems like a no-brainer. But again, I had no rules. So I knew specifically that I would be in big trouble for smoking cigarettes. And so we had a perfume party or perfume fight, I think is what I told my dad, where we just sprayed each other down with perfume, which is like 101 for getting caught for smoking cigarettes, right? So and this isn't something I realized till like just a few years ago. Yeah, so he eventually picks me up, and honestly, I can't tell you what time. Like the police didn't interview me till like 7 years after. So I mean, I think at one point I told them it was pretty close to sundown, and then like I've changed my story, and honestly, I don't know what time. Like, it could have been between maybe like 4 and 8. Honestly, it could have been that long period. But I do remember he picks me up. I get into the truck. He doesn't say anything about cigarettes. And he says, your sister's not answering her phone. Will you try to call her? And hands me his cell phone. I don't have my own cell phone at this point. It's just him and Alyssa. So he hands me his cell phone, which he's been supposedly attempting to call her on. So that just doesn't make sense, right? Like, it's the same number. Why would she pick up for me versus you? It seemed pretty normal. Like, him being frantic about Alyssa and where she was and what she was doing and being pissed about it was like an everyday thing. So yeah, he was frantic about it. He was upset about it, but that was super normal. So I wouldn't call his behavior abnormal to me, other than not recognizing the cigarette smell. But I call her, at least once, if not multiple times. I don't remember if I leave a voicemail or anything like that. She doesn't answer, and then we get back to the house. I can't remember who enters the house first, but I enter her room first. So we get in, and to the left is her dresser. Well, first, when you enter, there's an entryway, right? So the left on the dresser, and to the right is her bed. So it's a very small entryway. Like, so you have to walk through it. It's not like something you just observe. So I walk in, and there's a bunch of papers dumped on the ground, which is weird because Alyssa was really neat. Like, she was very much that motherly, had a neat room, versus me. Like, I was like sloppy and like the messiest bedroom and all that. But yeah, so you notice it right away. There's all these papers on the floor, and then to the left is her dresser. It's one of the tall ones with like 5 drawers or whatever. And there's her note and a cell phone. So yeah, I found all that first, and the note said, "Dad and Sarah, when you picked me up from school today, I decided I really am going to California. Sarah, you wanted me gone. Look, now you have it. That's why I saved my money. Dad, I took $300 from you, Alyssa." As far as I know, like, all her favorite makeup was there, her favorite jewelry, her favorite clothes, because I took them and wore them and used them after. Especially, that summer, I thought she was coming back, so it was kind of like free reign, kind of like a bratty little sister. I just started wearing all her stuff and makeup and all that. So no, my dad has told both stories. He says that she took a week's worth of clothes, and then he says that she took nothing. But yeah, as far as I could tell, if anything was missing, it wasn't much.
I asked Sarah if she was willing to share with me what her theory is about what happened to her sister. This is what she had to say.
The main line of this is that he took her out of school and out into the desert to sexually assault her again. I think that's where it started. And what happened there and how it escalated, I don't know. And that's the thing with Arizona and Phoenix specifically, is there's this freeway where you can just go up. It's, the I-17, and you just start driving north, and there's every exit leads you to desert. But when I say that theory too, it's like I have these conflicting feelings because of the note. I feel like the note was written on a different day. The handwriting analysis does show that her signature was most likely written on a different day. So I have these conflicting feelings because I feel like in one breath it seems very calculated. It was the last day of school. And I feel like that was done very much on purpose, right? Because what happens when a kid goes missing in the middle of a school year? Everybody knows about it. There's an announcement about it. Sometimes there's assemblies about it. They'll put like the kid's desk out on the lawn and make it like a memorial. Like, they just usually do some type of grand gesture to remember that child or spread awareness. And on the last day of school, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen at all. So nobody knew. Nobody would think of it until she didn't come back for the next semester. So yeah, I don't know if it was completely planned out or a mixture of, oh my gosh, I have this note. now she's pissed me off again. I don't want to go through what I went through a year ago with this sexual assault, accusations and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like it could go either way. Could have been meticulously planned, because he did buy things like lime and concrete. I'd have to look back at the dates, but like a few weeks or something before she was gone, there was a storage unit I didn't know about. Yeah, it's hard because there's so many different factors. But a lot of it points to it being thought out. But I don't know if that was like a failsafe for when he needed to do it versus very methodically, I'm going to do it on this day. I don't know.
Hearing about the storage unit piqued my interest, so I asked a few more questions about that evidence.
They found a receipt for, I think it was like all state storage for this date. And that's all we know. But I put it in the timeline and it sparks. You know what I mean? So no, the only thing I saw in the papers, as far as I know, they just found that receipt and that was it. But I mean, granted, if he's, well, I guess at that time he would have been maintaining the storage unit. So yeah, I guess, yeah, they should have checked that out. I don't know why they didn't.
I was also curious to know more about the cement and the limes that Sarah talked about.
Like, we didn't have a garden. We weren't building anything. There was nothing that you would need lime and cement for unless for some reason he was helping somebody else, which he didn't have any friends. Like, he was friendly to the neighbors and stuff like that, but he didn't like have friends that would come over. He didn't go to friends' houses. Like, he didn't call them on the phone. Like, it was, yeah, he was very much a loner. So I don't know what he was using these for, but yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely told, and you've seen a lot of different situations, that lime is used to help decompose a body. And in fact, he has so many of these crazy writings. And in one of these essays, he talks about how he killed 2 men. And he says that he used lime to help dissolve the bodies. So there's these small connections that I can't help but think of, but I can't tie together for sure. When you go through this case file, all roads lead to Michael Turney. There's no other alternative.
So a few years after Alyssa goes missing, Michael gets arrested for planning to blow up a union hall. Now, this is the same union hall that he worked for. It was the Electrical Workers Union. And when the police arrived at the home, they found a bunch of homemade pipe bombs, a lot of assault rifles, and a 98-page manifesto. He titled the manifesto A Diary of a Madman Martyr, and in the manifesto he changes the story and blames the union for taking Alyssa, and he says that this is his way of taking revenge. I asked Sarah what she thought of her dad's plan to attack the union hall.
The thing about the union is these types of union stories about being harassed are not uncommon. And do I think he was slightly harassed? Sure. Was he that guy on the job that would complain about everything and report every little thing he saw? Yeah, he was. So did some people retaliate by maybe calling him or bullying him? I believe that. But the cornerstone of his story is that they fired him 3 weeks before my mother died. I had heard this all growing up. When you get fired 3 weeks before your wife dies, with a high performance review, like it's something I would hear at the grocery store, at the bank. I would hear it multiple times a day. Like, it's ingrained in my head. So when I found out that he wasn't fired and quit, my mind exploded. Like, I can't tell you how many people I was texting and like calling, and my brain just blew into a million different pieces because this is the entire cornerstone of his sob story that I've heard my entire life. But yeah, he was never fired. He quit. So I think there was a little bit of retaliation, but did they carry that on for now 50 years? I don't think so. I think it was just his psychosis. I think it was just the way he thought he could end his story while still being a hero. Because that's the thing, is like, growing up as a teenager, when I would confront him with like, hey, I'm literally doing drugs, you gave me drugs, like, you're not a good dad, like, he would just deflect everything. Like, I've never seen him admit fault for anything in his life. And I think that's where it comes from. I think that by blaming it on the union, by making himself this martyr, I mean, Diary of a Madman Martyr was his writing. He doesn't see himself as a bad guy, and this is a way to get out of that. he's avenging Alyssa's death. He can go out of this world, or, in my opinion, I don't think that he was planning on killing himself. I believe that he was planning on escaping and like starting a new life or whatever. But in this way, he could end this story while still being a good guy. So I think that's where the union came into play. I mean, I think it was a natural segue from his obsession with the union anyway. But again, like, he can go out in a blaze of glory like Bruce Willis in some terrible action movie. Like, I think that was his plan.
So even after this mountain of evidence against Michael Turney in this case, the Phoenix Police Department hasn't made any moves in terms of trying to prosecute him. This actually surprises me because at one point they were seeking out Sarah's help to try to build a case to prosecute him. Sarah talks at length about a particular conversation she has with the Phoenix Police Department on her podcast. I'll put a link to that episode below, but for now, here's Sarah talking about her current relationship with the Phoenix Police Department.
Their opinion hasn't changed. They still believe it's my father. Like, there's no other alternative that we can see. And they made that really clear to me. Like, when they arrested my father, when they raided the house that day, they sat me down and basically gave me a 40-minute rundown of the case. How they've exhausted every lead and they've talked to everyone, and how Alyssa was sexually abused by our father, how my father had a child from another person that he abandoned. Like, and then they said, we think it's your dad. We're raiding your house. Like, I never at any point in this investigation came to them and said, you need to look at my dad. I think it's my dad. Please believe me that it's my dad. It was the opposite. They sat me down and said, listen, honey, like, this was your dad and we're raiding your house right now. And he's going to go to jail. Do you want to tell us anything you haven't told us before? And of course, like, I was completely honest with them from the beginning. So no, I didn't have anything. Like, I wish I had something I had been holding back that I could contribute to it, but I don't. But no, they've never changed it. And after he was arrested, what happened was a few years after the 2020 and everything really came to light, I went back to them and said, hey, like, I see what you see. I don't think he's innocent anymore. Like, I asked him and he was super weird about it. Like, how can I help? And they started like saying, can you ask him about this? Can you talk to him about this? What do you think he thinks about this? And it became like a mini investigation all over again. And then they said, okay, Sarah, this is what we're going to do. When he gets out of prison, we're going to arrest him, because if we do it while he's in prison, he'll be able to combine sentences and serve a shorter term. And so I'm like, great, sounds good. Like, these guys have done a great job. I have no worries. Like, at this point, I'm not like I am today. I wasn't suspicious of the police. I thought that they were doing a great job, and I was really supportive of them and honestly loved them. Like, interviewed them for my school paper. They came to my house and pet my dogs. Like, we were close. And this is like 10 years or something that we've been working together. So it's not, yeah. So anyway, we had a much better relationship then. And then my dad got out of prison and they didn't prosecute him. And I asked for a meeting, like, I think it was about 3 months later that we had this meeting, and they sat me down and I said, listen, we're not going to prosecute. We need a body. And I said, okay, where are we looking for the body? And they said, well, we can't look for a body. And I said, okay, they said they don't have the resources. So I said, can I raise funds for you guys to look for the body? And they said, no. Then they said, but what we're going to do is give you a silent witness campaign with a billboard on every freeway in Phoenix. That never happened. And then they told me your best chance is to get media exposure. So, I mean, I think the police don't want the entire investigation to come out, because I think, I'm told by lawyers that they're very liable for what happened. Like, they messed up and they know it. And I don't think they want it to come out, but I fully believe that it will. And it's the right thing. Like, it's fine. Everybody makes mistakes, but now's the time to correct it, not further cover it up and make it worse.
So despite all of the odds seemingly stacked against Sarah, she's been doing everything that she can to try to get her sister's story out there. Like I mentioned, Sarah has a podcast, Voices for Justice. She even started a blog to get her sister's story out there. On both platforms, Sarah painstakingly goes through every detail in this case and even details of her own life to try to spread some awareness about this. So I asked Sarah, what is it that we can do as a true crime community to help this case get solved?
I've tried so many different things in the past, right? Petitions and all sorts of things, and writing people and calling people, and I just don't think that there's a silver bullet. But what I do know that works is media pressure. So just share her story. It costs you nothing. Like, just share it with your friends, like it, put a comment on it, like, make it go viral on social media, because it won't be ignored for much longer. It can't be. But it's this ever-growing movement of Alyssa's army, as they named themselves, that is really pushing this forward, that I think is really scaring the authorities and telling them, oh my gosh, this isn't going to go away like we want it to. Like, this is never going to go away. But if that media pressure goes away and that build goes away, then yeah, then they're off the hook. So that's where I'm at. Like, yeah, I'm raising money for billboards, and that's great if you want to do that. But again, it's just this media pressure. Just share it. Share the story. Share this video. Share, the blog. Share anything you can. That's where it's at. Is I just need the whole world screaming about her to make this happen. And I think that, again, this isn't like my first. This isn't Plan A. Plan A was never to like air all of this to the world and show the whole world my inner workings of my family. Like, I've been pushed to this point, and that's where we're at. Is we need it to be like making a murderer. We need that social pressure to really move this case forward. And I wish there was a different way, but there's not. So yeah, I just need the whole world to care, which seems like a big ask, but I have to ask.
So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope that you learned a lot about Alyssa Turney and about this case, and I hope that you're ready to be an advocate with Sarah in trying to help find Alyssa. I'm going to link a lot of the places down below that you can find Sarah's content, especially her podcast. Believe it or not, there's a lot more evidence that we didn't go through in this video itself, so there's so much more to learn and there's so much more to dig into. And I really want you to spread some love to the Voices for Justice podcast. Another link I'm going to put down below is to a GoFundMe. It's so that Sarah can put up some billboards around Phoenix that will help spread the word about Alyssa's case. A big part of this as well is that Michael Turney is currently a free man still living in Arizona. And so by putting billboards up around the area, this will be a constant reminder to both the police department and Michael Turney himself, as well as the community, that there is still a young woman who is out there who's missing, and we really need to do everything that we can to try to help find her and get justice in this case. And with everything that you do on social media, please use the hashtag #JusticeForAlyssa. This is to get more people interested in the case, and if somebody doesn't know about it, they can easily look it up and get more information. Finally, I want to extend a big thank you to Sarah Turney. Thank you so much for coming onto my channel and for talking with me, for sharing your story and for sharing Alyssa's story. You've been such an amazing advocate and amazing sister, and I know that in 2020, this will finally be the year that Alyssa gets justice. So thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you next time.